I've talked about some of this. If I'm a company commander and I'm in charge of training Afghan forces, I want to do a good job. And when I report to my battalion commander, and I'm working with these guys for a month, and he says, "How are those guys?" And I say, "Well, they got some work to do. They're not that great. They're deficient here. They're deficient there. They're not good at this." And my battalion commander says, "Okay, well, get them squared away." The next month, what do I say? I'm going to tend to say, "Yeah, well, we're making some improvements. We're doing a little bit better. We've got them issued better gear. We got the supply issues taken care of that we were worried about. We did a live fire training operation." And so you end up, just by virtue of having a positive attitude, which Americans certainly have, we end up painting a better picture than what is actually happening. I saw this. I try to think if I did this. I believe I did. I believe that I did in training Iraqi forces. Would sometimes say, I would put some lipstick on the situation a little bit. Again, trying to have a positive attitude, trying to look at the brightest side of what was happening. And there was times in Iraq where the Iraqis would take over a position and the insurgents would immediately attack it and crush them. And so we got put in check a few times. I would almost say luckily, because what that caused us to do was to be very honest about the capabilities of the people we were working with. So there is actual times where the Iraqis would take over, let's say, a checkpoint. We'd say, "Yep, they're good to go." And this is when I say we, I mean coalition forces in general. The Americans that are there said, "Yes, we've been working with these Iraqis. They can handle this checkpoint." We'd step away from the checkpoint. And this happened almost immediately upon my arrival. This checkpoint got taken over by the Iraqis, and the insurgents attacked it a day later or 2 days later. They killed the American advisor that was there. Actually, 2 American advisors that were there overran. It was total disaster. And that happened when I first showed up. So it really put us in check in terms of, okay, we need to be very cautious about what we report up the chain of command and when they're actually ready. But at the same time, my guess is, and even when we left Iraq, I was very worried. I was very worried when America left Iraq, when coalition forces left Iraq. I thought to myself, they're not ready yet. And there's a obvious similar theme here. So almost I never fought in Iraq, in Afghanistan, but everyone that I know that worked on the ground with the Afghan forces were all not surprised. Hey, they weren't ready yet. They just weren't ready yet. And it's almost like when you have these elements, the U.S. support is really like the long pole in the tent. And all the other tent poles and the canvas that goes over the tent and the stakes that go on the ground, all those things are really, really important. And you can build those up and you can make them really good, and they can provide you shelter from the rain and shelter from the wind. But if you pull out that one long pole in the middle, it has a huge negative impact. And that's sort of, again, in hindsight, as I look at it, that's one of the things I think happened.
Yeah, I think there were just multiple things. I think even right down to the number of ghost soldiers. So on paper, there might be 300,000 Afghan soldiers when in reality there's a quarter of that, because commanders were taking money of people that never existed, or they were dead, or there was no accountability. I can go into corruption for days in how that really destroyed Afghanistan. And
so to drill into that corruption that you just talked, let me see if I got this little piece of it right.
Right.
I'm a commander. I'm an Afghan commander. If I say I have 500 soldiers, I get X amount of money.
Yep.
So guess how many I have? 700.
And 2 of your guys die, you're not going to report that because you still want to keep getting their money, to the point where they would take the bank cards of the dead soldiers and go to the bank and get their paychecks every week or every month. Like it's the level, and we can get into this, but I've never seen a more corrupt place on every possible level. And yet we, and when I say we, I say the United States, we turned a blind eye to that for really 20 years. Instead of going to the root and fixing it, we let it fester and create this entire industry of corruption, which is what the Taliban was not only able to capitalize on, but they came in saying, well, we're not going to be corrupt. And people that don't even like the Talibans were so fed up with that corruption that they were going to support that, even if they didn't support the ideology.